Guys, so I'm sure you've seen some of the feeds this week about this First Lieutenant Spenser Rapone. He is a military West Point graduate, U.S. Army, and he was caught recently. He tweeted a picture of himself in his military uniform at a West Point graduation ceremony with a Che Guevara shirt under his uniform, which is in violation of the basic dress code of the U.S. military. But also, he had in his hat, he wrote, "Communism will win." And he took a picture with his hat outwards showing the camera that, basically giving a wink to all the other subversive communists out there. Well, he posted this photo to show support for Colin Kepernick on Twitter, and it caused a firestorm, which it rightfully should have. And we have to take this guy out, and I'll explain why. But just that alone, that action, shows he has no respect for basic uniform or the military in general, because it's against the basic dress code to wear any t-shirt under your uniform. And then on top of that, he defaced his government property when he wrote in his hat. But that's minor to some extent. It's major when you think about the context of this. But I want to go look at what it's all about first. And so we need to talk about cultural Marxism and Marxist subversion. And if you ever read David Horowitz wrote a lot about this stuff. His parents were both revolutionary communists, and they would have meetings in basements back in the 1960s and 70s. And they would talk about how they would go in and infiltrate the major institutions. At that time, it was always the schools, the universities, government offices. Now we're seeing it in our military. And the military was sort of the last frontier of institutions Marxists wouldn't approach, because our military, one, has a law that says communists cannot join the military. And they used to be pretty strict about enforcing that. They would ask lots of questions about these things and look into people's backgrounds. Well, under Obama, a lot of these regulations were sort of loosened and people looked the other way. On top of that, you had Obama firing a lot of the general staff and a lot of people who worked at West Point. And when you look at the guy, this Spenser Rapone, when you look at his advising staff and some of the people who were his teachers at West Point, it's a very clear picture that a lot of these people are hardcore leftists. And I have information on my Facebook feed that proves they look the other way, and we'll get to that in a minute. But back to the subversiveness of the left, we see David Horowitz write about this and how the left back in the 60s and 70s really got on this bandwagon of getting into universities, getting into some of these major institutions and targeting kids for brainwashing, for propaganda, stuff like that. And when I say brainwashing, I mean, you know, the usual, the socialism being softened by telling kids it's roads and schools when it's really not that by any definition. And so you see that. And then in the 90s, 2000s, we've seen more open subversion, where you just see people who've gone into corporate America, places like that, and they come out as open leftists, and they're very hostile. And we see that with Google and Facebook and a lot of these other companies. But the military was never touched, because the military was always very nationalistic. And like I said, a lot of regulations existed to prevent this very thing. And why does this matter? Because the guy is a communist, and communism is rooted in revolution. Communism is rooted in the overthrow of America, of what they consider to be our imperialistic agenda, which is really not. But, you know, there is, to some extent, the corporate agenda, which is funny because the corporations are the ones who are also pushing this Marxism. So you see that, but the other end to it is communists are about conflict. And conflict theory is key in communism. First it was class conflict, and now they've moved to this cultural and social conflict where they pit gays against straights, blacks against whites, things like that. But the fact is, with this kind of mentality, one, as a revolutionary, this guy is dangerous. He could plot to overthrow the country. He could meet up with other subversives and try to cause a coup, which sounds unrealistic, but it happens in other places. It's definitely happened pretty much everywhere Marxism's taken hold. They subverted the military, and that's how they got power. You saw it all the way back with the Bolsheviks. And then they killed most of the Bolsheviks because they were useful idiots, as Stalin once said. But the other aspect of this, besides this guy being dangerous just by being a communist and being revolutionary, is that his men will never respect him. People under his command will never respect him because they will know that he's got this ideology that is against our very nature as a country and as a military. And so it becomes a danger for him. There are plenty of instances where people are beat up or killed by their own platoons, and I'm sure a lot of them get reported as friendly fire, wink wink. So, you know, not saying to do any harm to this guy, but it's a joke, guys. Anyway, this guy, you know, he's a danger to himself, but he's also a danger to our country, and we cannot let this slide. I've put all the information you need to know on my Facebook feed. There's posts, I screenshot and captured posts of some of this guy's friends saying that West Point instructors knew about him, that they covered it up, that people around him were also communists. So, you know, maybe we just need a purge of West Point. Maybe we need to change all of our leadership. Damn dog. So, it's not even my dog, guys. So anyway, what can we do to change this? Well, we need to, one, write these generals, write the general staff. I think he's at Fort Drum. I put the link for their phone number. Write to Central Command, U.S. Army, but also write to your congressmen and senators. Call the offices. Call the Investigator General. Call the Garrison Command Office at Fort Drum. Call West Point Command and the Dean's Office and find out what they knew. Demand that they do a full investigation, make public the report, and demand he is court-martialed with a dishonorable discharge. Now, he could be jailed for this even, but, you know, that's not what we're out to do. We just want to weed these people out of these positions of power. And imagine, this guy could become a general one day. And then what? A guy like this commanding thousands or hundreds of troops and controlling large stockpiles of weaponry, that's not going to end well, especially when you see these groups that he belongs to out plotting violence for November 4th. Right now, the groups he belonged to are plotting violence right now in this country for November 4th. And it's all over Facebook, it's all over Twitter, there are posters everywhere. They've been blocking the highways, holding up signs saying on November 4th it begins. So we have to stop this, guys. We have to start purging these communists from our schools and from our military and from any other institution they subvert. Because if you look at the NFL and everything else that's happening right now, all the rioting, all the hate and violence you see from the left, and then you see what they do to our institutions, they just crumble them one by one. They destroy everything they touch. And it's always privileged white guys. And this guy is the son of some politician who's been plundering the city for money. So, you know, it's always spoiled, privileged guys who want to go do this kind of communist shenanigans. And they're dangerous, guys, because, you know, people like this, they're not set in reality like we are. They're frenzied. They think everybody's a fascist. They want to cause violence when they can't beat somebody in intellectual debate. So you look at if you go read Marx, if you go read Alinsky, if you go read any prolific, Pushkin, any prolific anarchist or communist writer, it's all about revolution. It's all about violence. It's all about conflict. And we can't let these people continue to brainwash our kids. We can't let them continue to remain in our institutions. It is not going well, guys. And I encourage everybody to go out, write the generals, write the media, write the congressmen, talk about it on your live streams, and really go out and make Spenser Rapone a name the military wants to forget exists and erase from their history. Thanks, guys.